Donald Trump's approach to politics mirrored his business style. It was confrontational, it was theatrical. He brought a flair for drama and a knack for grabbing headlines, much like he did in the business world. He believed in pushing boundaries to gain leverage. This was not just a tactic, but a core part of his philosophy. By constantly challenging norms, he aimed to keep his opponents off balance. Trump's strategy relied on taking extreme positions. He would often start negotiations with an outrageous demand, knowing he could dial it back later. This method, while risky, often forced his adversaries to reconsider their own positions. He would then use these to negotiate from a position of strength. By setting the terms of the debate, Trump ensured that he was always in control of the narrative. This approach, often dubbed the art of the deal, shaped his presidency. His book, The Art of the Deal, became a blueprint for his political maneuvers, emphasizing the importance of bold moves and high stakes. He employed it in domestic and foreign policy alike. Whether dealing with Congress or negotiating with foreign leaders, Trump's tactics were consistent. He sought to project strength and decisiveness at all times. Trump's tactics frequently sparked controversy. His unorthodox methods and brash style often led to heated debates and polarized opinions. Critics argued his methods were reckless. They claimed that his approach undermined traditional diplomatic protocols and could lead to unintended consequences. They said he prioritized personal victories over national interests. Critics pointed to instances where Trump's decisions seemed more focused on short-term gains rather than long-term stability. Supporters, however, praised his willingness to challenge the status quo. They admired his boldness and saw him as a disruptor who was unafraid to take on the establishment. They believed he was a master negotiator. To them, his ability to secure favorable deals and assert American interests on the global stage was proof of his effectiveness. Trump's presidency, though, left a lasting impact. It redefined political discourse. His tenure brought to light many underlying issues and forced a national conversation on various topics. It exposed deep divisions within American society. The stark contrast in opinions about his leadership highlighted the polarized nature of contemporary politics. Trump's extreme positions were evident from the start. His executive orders and policy decisions often reflected his confrontational style. He implemented a travel ban targeting several Muslim-majority countries. This move was met with widespread protests and legal challenges, showcasing the contentious nature of his policies. He promised to build a wall on the U.S.-Mexico border. This promise became a central theme of his campaign and presidency, symbolizing his tough stance on immigration. He withdrew the United States from the Trans-Pacific Partnership trade agreement. This decision marked a significant shift in America's trade policy and was part of his broader strategy to renegotiate international agreements. These actions signaled a departure from traditional diplomacy. Trump's approach often left allies and adversaries alike uncertain about America's next move. They ushered in an era of unpredictability on the world stage. The global community had to adapt to a new, more volatile form of American leadership. The long-term consequences of Trump's approach are still unfolding. Scholars and analysts continue to debate the lasting effects of his presidency on both domestic and international fronts. His presidency tested the resilience of American democracy. The institutions and norms that underpin the political system were challenged in unprecedented ways. It highlighted the fragility of global alliances. Trump's actions often put strain on long-standing partnerships and raised questions about the future of international cooperation. Whether one agreed with his methods or not, one thing was certain: Trump's presidency was anything but ordinary. His time in office will be remembered as a period of significant change and upheaval. His legacy will continue to be debated for years to come. The full impact of his presidency may not be understood for decades, but it has undoubtedly left an indelible mark on the nation and the world. Trump's approach to trade was a prime example of his extreme deal-making. He often touted his skills as a negotiator, claiming that he could secure better deals for the United States than any of his predecessors. He believed the United States had been taken advantage of in trade deals for decades. His solution was tariffs, which he saw as a tool to level the playing field and protect American industries. He imposed heavy taxes on goods imported from countries like China, aiming to make foreign products more expensive and less attractive to American consumers. This triggered a trade war, a series of retaliatory measures between the two largest economies in the world. The tariffs on Chinese goods were unprecedented in their scope, affecting a wide range of products and industries. They covered billions of dollars worth of products, from consumer electronics to industrial machinery. These included electronics, machinery, and agricultural goods, which are critical components of both economies. The tariffs were intended to pressure China into making concessions, particularly in areas where the U.S. felt it was being unfairly treated. Trump wanted China to reduce its trade surplus with the United States, which he argued was a sign of unfair trade practices. He also demanded intellectual property protections and an end to forced technology transfers, which were major points of contention. The trade war had immediate economic consequences, causing volatility in the stock markets and affecting global supply chains. Prices for consumers rose on both sides of the Pacific as the cost of imported goods increased. Businesses faced uncertainty and disrupted supply chains, which made it difficult to plan for the future. The International Monetary Fund warned that the trade war was harming the global economy, potentially leading to slower growth and increased instability. It urged the U.S. and China to find a resolution, emphasizing the need for cooperation and dialogue. After months of escalating tensions, the two sides reached a preliminary agreement in January 2020, known as the Phase 1 Trade Deal. The Phase 1 trade deal saw China agree to increase purchases of U.S. goods and services, which was a significant win for American farmers and manufacturers. It also made some concessions on intellectual property and currency manipulation, addressing some of the key issues raised by the U.S. However, many of the underlying issues remained unresolved, leaving the door open for future conflicts. The trade war highlighted the Trump administration's willingness to use aggressive tactics to achieve its economic objectives, a strategy that had both supporters and critics. Supporters argued that the tariffs were necessary to protect American jobs and industries from unfair competition. Critics, however, contended that the tariffs hurt American consumers and businesses, leading to higher prices and economic uncertainty. The trade war also had broader implications for global trade as other countries watched closely and considered their own trade policies. Analysts debated the long-term effects of the trade war, with some predicting lasting damage to the global economy, while others believed it could lead to more balanced trade relationships. Ultimately, the case of China and the U.S. trade war serves as a complex example of the challenges and consequences of modern trade policies. It underscores the importance of diplomacy, negotiation, and the need for a balanced approach to international trade. As the world continues to navigate these issues, the lessons learned from the U.S.-China trade war will undoubtedly shape future trade strategies and policies. Immigration was a defining issue of Trump's presidency. From the very beginning of his campaign, he made it clear that he intended to take a hardline stance on immigration, which resonated with a significant portion of the American electorate. He campaigned on a promise to build a wall along the U.S.-Mexico border, a symbol of his commitment to securing the nation's borders. This promise became a central theme of his rallies, where chants of "Build the Wall" echoed through the crowds. Beyond the wall, Trump also pledged to enact stricter immigration enforcement measures. He emphasized the need to crack down on illegal immigration and to ensure that those who entered the country did so through legal channels. Upon taking office, he implemented a series of executive orders that dramatically reshaped U.S. immigration policy. These orders aimed to fulfill his campaign promises and to demonstrate his administration's commitment to tackling immigration issues head-on. One of Trump's most controversial actions was the so-called Muslim ban. This executive order barred citizens from several Muslim-majority countries from entering the United States, sparking widespread debate and outrage. The ban led to chaos at airports and confusion among travelers, many of whom were suddenly unable to enter the country. Families were separated and lives were disrupted as the new policy took effect. The ban sparked protests and legal challenges. Across the nation, people took to the streets and airports to voice their opposition, holding signs and chanting slogans against the perceived injustice. Critics argued it was discriminatory and unconstitutional. Legal experts and civil rights organizations quickly mobilized to challenge the ban in court, arguing that it violated fundamental principles of equality and justice. The administration defended the ban as necessary to protect national security. They argued that the countries included in the ban were identified as potential threats and that the measure was essential to safeguard American citizens. Another flashpoint was the Trump administration's zero-tolerance policy at the U.S.-Mexico border. This policy mandated the prosecution of all individuals who crossed the border illegally, leading to significant consequences for migrant families. This policy led to the separation of thousands of migrant children from their parents. The images of distraught children being taken away from their families drew widespread condemnation and became a symbol of the administration's harsh approach. Images of children being held in cages sparked outrage and condemnation. The sight of young children in detention centers, often in poor conditions, fueled protests and calls for the policy to be reversed. The administration argued that the separations were necessary to deter illegal immigration. They claimed that strict enforcement was the only way to prevent a surge in illegal border crossings and to maintain the integrity of the nation's immigration system. Trump's immigration policies were met with fierce resistance from Democrats and immigrant rights groups. They argued that his policies were not only ineffective but also inhumane, causing unnecessary suffering and trauma. They argued that his policies were cruel and inhumane. Activists and community leaders organized marches and rallies, demanding an end to the policies and calling for more compassionate and just immigration practices. They also said they damaged America's reputation in the world. The international community watched closely, with many foreign leaders and organizations criticizing the U.S. for its treatment of immigrants and refugees. The debate over immigration intensified existing political divisions within the United States. The issue became a flashpoint in Congress, with heated debates and partisan clashes over the best approach to immigration reform. It also raised questions about the country's values and its commitment to human rights. The controversy over immigration policies forced Americans to confront difficult questions about their nation's identity and the principles it stands for.